I hear a lot of people these days wondering if they should move to the country. You want my advice? Too bad, you're getting it anyway. Yes, you do. You really want to move to the country because in the city, you feel like a goldfish in Paddy's markets, whereas in the country, you feel like a fish in the ocean, especially with how many floods there are these days. This is a quick rule of thumb to life. The more people around you that have that Honey Shelley voice, you know that type of woman, that questionably lesbian 60-year-old with links to bikies that can get you a free blender?
Me voice box has more ciggies in it than me ashtray, dolls.
God's people. I'm telling you from experience, the more teal voters you replace with Clive Palmer voters, happier you're going to be in life. Fact. It's a 1-to-1. As is the likelihood that someone's going to smash through your front window with their car so they can rack your plasma.
Fact, c***s.
For anybody who already isn't convinced, and let me know if you can think of a better example to highlight the difference between city and country life in Australia, but I think I've nailed it here. I think the difference is, in the city you have Cirque du Soleil. That is the entertainment of a Chinese man with a top hat and a mustache blowing a huge bubble that a sad clown midget crawls into. And then it gets pushed to the moon, where it pops. He has to hold his breath for 2 days while the Cirque du Soleil picks him up, drops him onto a fat man as he parachutes onto his stomach, takes a nap, and that's all a side act to the Romanian gymnast in the front who's putting her own head up her vagina and then giving birth to herself. Whereas a country circus? Straight up animal cruelty. It comes around once a year, it comes on their shit version of Channel 10, Southern Cross or whatever it's called. The ads are on. There's no difference between it and a World Animal Rescue ad. The only way you can tell the difference is because the music at the circus one is going... It's just over the same footage of a bear getting milked. The country ones have clowns, but they do try to escape because they're just as cruel to them as they are the monkeys. That's why It was hanging around in the gutter, or he was hiding from Circus Oz. He didn't want to eat kids, he just had no choice. That was his only protein. You get that circus metaphor? It's alright if you don't. I'll admit that it's fairly scattered. I'm trying to say that in the city, I think that things are way too insincere, and in the country, things are way too sincere. Like, no one's wearing a flannelette shirt, ironically, in Goulburn. I will bet you, regardless of whether you're from the country or the city, am I hitting the nail on the head here, that in Australia, the most mundane experience you can possibly have, i.e., the least memorable thing you've ever experienced, is being in one of those malls in a shit-kicker country town. I guess that's what you call it, but all that's in there is a Coles, a Donut King, and a Proud's jeweler. How are those the essentials? Anything that looks like a no, otherwise get the f*** out of Rockhampton. As well as, and I know that this is something that people in country towns don't care about, but everyone in the city's going to freak out. This is just like if you walk over to some natives and they're like, what, you don't have a magic well in your society? No, we don't. This is what I'm talking about. This freaks people in the city out. You still have a sanity. That is insanity. Unless you're mistaking it for a very specific pet barn where you can only buy frisbees, I don't know how it's still in business. How the f*** are you still playing CDs? Like, as in, how are you physically doing it? I see more cars with tape decks in them than CD players. The city is always making fun of the country for this, but you do need to take it as a backhanded compliment if you're from the bush. You are 15 years behind us, and I like it. I like expecting when I turn on the roadside motel TV in Bathurst that I'm going to see Knowlesy, but not because he's on a current affair, because he's trying to make it. It feels like it's Australian Idol time all the time. It's no wonder at all why old Sydney town closed down. It's because Dubbo exists. You're just doubling up. Like, you know when you're walking down the street in a country town and you see teenagers that are goths? What the fuck? I thought you went extinct! That's what's really cool about the country. It's a time capsule. As soon as you start living in a country town, your universe shrinks. It's kind of like being in that movie, The Mist. Everything outside the borders becomes fog. And you feel happier knowing your place in the world. Like, do you really need to know that Singapore exists? Do you really need to think for a second that if a port shuts down in Singapore, the price of nickel will be affected? Just go outside and dig up some nickel with your bare hands like a real man. Another incredible thing about the country being 15 years behind is so are the housing prices. You can buy a 4-bedroomer in Rockhampton for the same price as a night out in Brisbane, which adds more mystery to the eternal question, why are there apartment blocks in country towns? Who thought, let's build flats in a place with infinite space? Those are scarier to me than Soviet apartment blocks, because I get why Soviet apartment blocks exist. But you had infinite space! That is one of those few culture shocks of living in the country that you never get over. It's kind of like living in Japan for a while. There's just a layer that you're never going to understand. But here's the biggest question of rural Australia. How do you so consistently f up fish and chips? I get why Chinese food in the country is consistently terrible. I understand why I feel like walking into one of those restaurants with a jar of Canton and saying, instead of serving me what you're about to make, can you just cook this instead? I get the people in the comments are probably going to say something along the lines of, well, closest fish are 400 kilometres away, which is especially true after what the Liberals have done to the Darling. But I would rather eat one of those rotten 100-year-old cod than whatever the comes out of, quote, great fish and chips. It is something that you do have to get used to living in a country town, that you pretty much have the same diet as a convict on the First Fleet. The level of cuisine is probably there. But I think that the upside of that is if you die in the country, you get the same funeral as Gough Whitlam. Town shuts down, parade in your honour, there's a minute silence every day for the rest of eternity. A bronze statue of you is erected. Here lies a woman who was impregnated by someone who went on to be a reserve for the Knights and then got suspended before they played their first match because of their antics in Mad Monday. And still the most famous person to have ever come out of the town. You will be on the front page of the Toowoomba Times if you die there. She was taken from us too young, 117 years old. You die in the city? You know that scene where Luke Skywalker's dragged through the garbage compactor? That's you, except you're dead. That is just all your body is once you can no longer work for H&R Block. Garbage. Garbage that needs to be disposed of. Your best friends in the world. The people you grew up with at your funeral in the city will say, should we hang around for a bit? I don't know, man, the parking meter's almost up. And fair enough, they are expensive. Everything in the city is expensive. Here's another difference between the city and country. Michelle's patisserie. Another massive difference between city and country psychology, and I do love this about the country, it's just so much easier, so much more simple. Everybody in the country, when they're walking down the street, is thinking, is this rhubarb I bought big enough to spray red roos? Well, that grey roo's a red roo now. Whereas when you're walking down the street of the city, you know what everyone's thinking? Has anyone else noticed that I'm a failure? To which the answer is yes. Every time you're on the train or the bus and you see someone catching a glance at you, they're thinking you're a no-talent, mediocre piece of shit. And look, to be fair, to be a success in the city takes a lot more. The idea of a successful human being in the city is to have a penthouse with harbourfront views. You have to be a Hongkonese billionaire to afford it, sitting in a jacuzzi, getting sucked off by several geishas at once, yeah? You know what a successful human being in the country is? 3 kids. If you have twins, you get a twofer. You'll be on the front page of the Toowoomba Times for that. It'll be an exclusive like Jeff Bezos on Fortune magazine. How did she do it?
It's not easy having a part-time job as a receptionist at Ray White while raising kids. Oh, hang on. Yes, it is.
Speaking of real estate agents, the dress code in the city for real estate agents appears to be try to look as much like a tradie at the Melbourne Cup as possible. Real estate agents in the country, I don't know why this is, but they appear to be trying to confuse you into thinking they're an auctioneer at a livestock show. They all wear that puffy jacket that John Barilaro wears. Yeah, because in the...
No voice.
Sorry, force of habit. Also, Knicknack Shops are a great addition on every main street because they're just an old lady that's a hoarder, but it's cheaper for her to open up a shop than it is to hire a Kennard storage unit, and she can part with the 2 Buy Cotton Australia badges from the 20 she needs to sell every month to stay in business. That doesn't trigger her anxiety that much. Whereas in the city, there are knick-knack shops, but they're all drug fronts. It's just the old woman there couldn't part with that 20s pram, so she turned to a life of crime to keep it. That's something that is just so omnipotent in the city. Everyone there is doing coke, and I think the reason is that it gives them an excuse to be themselves. But themselves is just them talking about Kendrick Lamar a little bit faster than they normally do. How often have you heard this at a party of just like, oh yeah, he's just the best rapper alive. He's the best rapper alive. It's just like, it's kind of like Eminem, Jay-Z, who's another famous rapper that I can rap off the top of my head. Flavor Flav, you know, but like he's up there, hey. It's so boring. Every party conversation in this city is, have you seen this piece of media I'm about to show you on your phone, regardless of whether you've seen it or not? In the country, first off, they don't know how to use a smartphone. The phone's smarter than them. And second, they don't need to. They've actually got stories. There's always like so many parties that I've been to in country towns have something like, oh yeah, did I ever tell you about the time my friend drowned in a wheat silo? And everyone there,
Yeah, tell it, Damo, it's fucking funny.
and no one cares. No one's freaked out. It's just a fun story, because this is the other one that might be, I don't know, just a little bit less abstract than something comparing Cirque du Soleil to Circus Oz to describe the difference between country and city. In the country, life is cheaper, but there's also life. In the city, I can't tell you how many times I've walked out of my apartment and felt like a battery falling out of a remote. Whereas in the country, you feel like some old cobblestone windmill instead. Like, not much going on, but you don't seem to care either. Anyway, that's all I'm saying. Did I miss anything? Oh yeah, that's right. Also, in the country, you can also buy gumboots at the post office. There's a plus, whereas in the city, you can buy shirts at friendlyjordies.com, as well as the country, as well as the entire world. Make sure you get one of those, and I'll see you next time. Like and subscribe, you fucking good people. Thank you very much for watching.
You only ship them to Australia.
I've just been informed that we only ship them to Australia.
Please share and comment below. Comment.